Good afternoon. This is Ann Katzeff of Ask Design. Welcome to today's tutorial, which is adjusting the space between WordPress blocks. Using spacer blocks is one of the quickest and easiest ways to add an adjustable amount of space between WordPress blocks. The user doesn't have to know any code. The block is intuitive, and it has very simple controls for changing the height and basic styling. Let's get to it. We'll start with adding a block after a selected block using the toolbar. So we've selected this block, the paragraph block. My toolbar is floating above it. I go over to the options, these three vertical dots, click on that, add after, type a backslash, and then SP. You can see the options are starting to appear, and I've already got the spacer, so I've selected that. The default height is 100. You can easily change it by grabbing that bottom bar nodule and moving it up and down. Another option is to add before rather than add after, and use the list view. So let's try that. I'll go back to the same paragraph. Let me see. Got the toolbar still floating above it. These three vertical bars will open up the list view if I click on it. There we go. The paragraph is being highlighted in the list view, the one that I've selected. If I change it, the next item is highlighted. So let's go back to this one. And again, you have those three vertical dots to represent the options. And we'll add before. Type backslash SP until you see the spacer. And we've got another way to change the height by going to the block settings area. Here it is at 100. You can change that number directly by typing in a new number or using the slider. Now the default measurement is pixels, px. If you click on that, you can change it to any of these other options: percentage, M, rem, VW, and VH. So let's go back to pixels. Now the styling is pretty basic for the spacer block. If you select the spacer block and instead of settings, click on the styles, you'll see the margins are set at a default of 1.5 rem above. You can see the blue space above there. I can adjust that, playing around with it. I can also go to this section here, the margin options. So if I want to just control the top or the bottom, I can do that. So it's a mix and match of both things. Or to get even more custom, these indicate custom size. So let's try 35 pixels. And again, you can change your measurements by clicking on pixels and you'll get the drop down. You can transform a spacer block to a group block to get more options, and it gets pretty interesting. So let's first select the spacer block and go to the stylings section. You can reset all the margins, so let's do that. Let's start with a fresh slate. Watch in the list view what happens with this spacer block. So I'm going to click on the spacer icon in the toolbar and transform it to a group. And that spacer block now is inside the group. You have all these other layout options that you didn't have before, and we'll cover that in another tutorial. But let's go back to the styling, and you can choose a background color. So that's nice. And in addition, adjust the height. That's nice. What else can you do? You can, let me see, be sure when you do any other changes in the styling, be sure you've got the group selected, and you can change the align settings. Right now it's none. Let's try wide width and update that. And let's see what happens when we go to the front end and view it there. There you go. So there's the wide width spacer block in a group that now has a background color. I did the same thing changing it to full width, and you can see it extends out to the end of the screen. So you can see there are some clear benefits of using the spacer block. You can quickly add some empty space between blocks. You don't have to know any code. And it's easily adjustable, even more so when you transform it to a group block. But there are limitations for the spacer block. Most of the spacing in a website should be separate from the content, and it's usually handled in the themes style sheets that you're using. If you find yourself using the spacer block repeatedly in specific situations, it's really best to modify the style sheet. You can either create a new class to apply to those situations and or edit the block styling itself. And there's this interesting quote I found from Justin Tadlock. From a technical viewpoint, the spacer block is not an ideal method of spacing. It adds an empty div to the document output just to create white space. This breaks every good web design standard out there, especially the separation of content and style. However, it is arguably the most intuitive spacing tool in WordPress. From a user experience standpoint, it's easier to recommend users place spacer blocks wherever they need them than to teach new users, especially to configure spacing block by block. So, with all that in mind, use the spacer block when you need to. And if you're just using it like all the time in those same situations, start to think about changing your style sheet. I hope this tutorial has been of use to you, and I'd love to hear your feedback and comments. Feel free to let me know what you think. Thanks so much.